we'll do is I'll hit record as we proceed, and then anybody else who joins in. It looks like Michaela's here. Hi, Michaela. And Michaela, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Just want to make sure that everybody's with us before we get started. All right, so with that, welcome. This is our class. We're moving right along in this course, so thank you for coming to the video session. I am going to share the screen. And the difference again between this period and office hours would just be that we are working through some course related content and talking through assignments, so it is recorded. Office hours are drop-in session, and so we'll take a look at the Blackboard page together. We are on week 4. Congratulations. So my first question will be just checking kind of a pulse here. How did you all feel about the quiz? Does anybody want to share? Hopefully okay. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, the quiz was okay. There was like, I don't know if everybody here's taken it, but the first question kind of asked for a specific time frame, and that wasn't something that I'd thought to study per se.
Sure.
It wasn't, yeah. And I did okay on it, not as good as I'd like, but I kind of know what to expect now. So I hope to do better on the next one.
Nice. Yeah. So just kind of getting the feel for what the quizzes look for in general. Perfect. Anybody else? Paul, I thought I saw your microphone go.
What?
Hi, Paul. I was wondering if you had any questions or comments about the quiz.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Good. Well, yeah, it is multiple choice format. You'll see that with upcoming quizzes. So what I want to do, since people don't have questions regarding anything particular on the quiz, is I want to take a look at what we have upcoming for the next several weeks. So we'll do that together. We have week 4 right now. We're back to the discussion. So again, remember, our initial post is due on Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. That is Mountain Standard Time. I know that we live all over the US, which is a really cool thing about online courses, but remembering that Colorado time, Mountain Standard, is important, especially as we eventually this semester will be approaching the time change. So remember, if you're not sure, you can obviously do the math in your head, or you can just Google what time is it in Colorado, and that'll help you to make sure that you're on track. Our next focuses for this week would be consciousness and human development. Those are the areas that we'll be addressing in week 4, as well as week 5 and week 6. So obviously there are many different interesting and fascinating areas of psychology. And one of my favorites is human development. And we've already had the opportunity to dive in several times to the concept of identity and who are you and how did you become the person that you are today and where are you moving for the future. So that's something that we can examine here too. You'll see these bullet points for week 4 topic outcomes. And when you look at week 5, you'll notice that they're very similar. And then week 6, similar content again for the bullet points. And that's because we have 3 weeks to go over these main ideas. So what I'll do here today first is talk about the assignments that we have coming up. And then I want to move into a couple of these topic outcomes and just kind of go over them in brief so that we have kind of prepared ourselves for examination of those in the reading as well as in the discussions and the assignments coming up. So in week 4, we've got the assigned reading for chapter 8. The focus here is motivation and emotion. And as I scroll down, now here with assignments, and I clicked on the discussion. This video is not available on the current network that I'm using, but you all should not have any trouble with it if you're not on a private network. So you shouldn't see an error message like that. If you do, please reach out to me right away. But take note, this is just because of the current network that I have on, which is private. So the discussion is about motivation. We do have a video to watch, which is about the power of motivation. And the bullet points here are talking about the theories of motivation. Which one resonates with you the most? So after you read and watch the video, you'll be able to answer that question more clearly and think about what influences your motivation. So in the end, nobody can physically make me get up at a wee hour of the morning, go out in weather that might be uncomfortable, and attend classes that I might not enjoy all day, every day for several years. And our hope is that the school experience is more pleasant than that. But whether our school experience is in person in a physical school, or whether it is at home in homeschool or online school, they all come with their own challenges. So reflect on your experiences as a learner, both now and in your past, and what you will encounter in the future if you plan to proceed with a 2 or a 4-year college degree. What motivates you to do that? College level education is very enjoyable, of course, and rich, and it's a wonderful opportunity, but it can also be difficult. And so it's important for us to stand back and say, what's motivating me to do what I'm doing? The course that we're taking right now is challenging, and it's exciting and relevant and applicable, but it's not easy. If anybody does find it easy, then that's good to hear. But I would say college level work, if you're really doing it with depth of analysis, is not going to be simple and easy. So it does require that dedication, that perseverance, resilience, and hard work. And at the end of the day, we need to step back and consider what drives us, what motivates us. Before I proceed, is anybody comfortable sharing something that motivates them to take this college course this semester? You can pop it in the chat if you don't want to speak up.
Probably because it was like a credit's worth of work for half a credit's worth of time.
Great. Thanks, Isaac.
And I thought it looked interesting.
Well, good. I hope that you still find it interesting. I'm glad to hear that. So for Isaac, it's related to credits as well as his general interest in the subject matter. Did I see another screen pop up? Anybody else?
Yeah, sorry. I was gonna agree with him. I think it's like, I would rather get this class done now rather than like take it just like a gen ed class in college next year. So it's just nice to get it out of the way, you know?
Absolutely. Thanks, Michaela. So really just kind of looking at the long-term academic trajectory and academic planning, and where do we want to go, not only with a high school diploma, but with a college degree. For many of us in the future, that's going to be a pursuit, and that's exciting. So when the going gets tough and you're not really into the whole sleep and dream unit, or maybe you're not feeling it with some of the more statistics or the research information, keep those motivations in mind, okay? The next bullet point is, how has your culture and life experience influenced your motivations? An example I have of culture, I've worked with students in high school for many years, approaching 10 years. And I had a student who was not from the United States originally, and he had come here many years later. And he was planning to drop out of high school as a junior. And of course, myself working in the school setting, you know, that to me is concerning, because when we work in the school setting, we say, oh, the goal is to graduate. And if you get your high school diploma, you could get this or that type of job. And trying to motivate the student, you might make more money. You might have these doors or opportunities opened. You might feel great about yourself finishing high school. And the student sat down with me and talked about this with me and said, my family members have not graduated high school, and it's not meaningful to us. I really don't care. And I don't need the high school diploma because I'm not going to go to college in America. My family already has a particular type of business that doesn't require a high school diploma, and I'm just going to go work with them. And he said, so why would I proceed with this when I could be working with them for the rest of my adult life making money? And to be honest, you guys, it kind of was a moment for me. And I'm not saying don't graduate high school. Obviously, I think working hard and finishing the program is really important and valuable, and there's great blessing in learning. It's a wonderful opportunity to be had for us, even if we don't enjoy all of it. In all labor, there is profit. So don't hear me saying that dropping out is a good idea, but it really caused me to pause and think, this person's culture and background and familial motivation or drive has influenced his interest in remaining in the high school setting. And my cultural background, I was born in America and I came from a family where people had graduated high school. And so then when I went to high school, it was never a question of whether I would graduate. It was more about what will we do when you graduate and after you graduate. And so it helped me to examine that person's background and understand where he was coming from. And that was really insightful for me. So as you're thinking about culture, life experience, consider these as you are looking at these theories of motivation. How does your cultural experience, and just because many of us may be from the United States, some of us may not be, doesn't mean that our cultural experiences are all the same, even if we are from the United States. As we know, every state can be very different. And even within states, there are many different rural, urban, or suburban areas with varying values, varying lifestyles, varying interests and hobbies and activities that are popular. Some of us have moved around. I've noticed that's a pretty big theme that has come up in discussions, people having to transition locations and feeling good about that or struggling with that, and different experiences in location and cultural setting. So that's what we'll be examining in the discussion. The final part of the prompt states that humans are social beings with a need to belong. And a sense of belonging is related to better health and emotional outcomes. So we then want to examine the scripture, thinking about the human need for relationship and belonging. Really try to dive deep on this. So we don't just want to, spit out something from Proverbs and call it a day. That's easy to do. But this is our opportunity to have critical thinking about the biblical perspective. So one thing that I enjoy, and I've mentioned it to y'all previously, is not just including verses, but thinking about Bible stories. There are so many rich stories, and the parables of Jesus in the Gospels. If we think about the life of Paul, think about Joseph and the coat of many colors and his family, think about Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, Ruth and Boaz. There are so many stories in both the Old and the New Testament that can really highlight the value of relationship and the value of belonging, or what could go wrong when those relationships are not maintained and preserved and built and cultivated in a holy way, in an upright way. What happens when selfishness starts to seep in and leak in? So when you think about motivation, you can connect it to relationship too. And while we're talking about the sense of belonging, we're going to be pulling in that biblical perspective to conclude for this discussion. Any questions about the week 4 discussion prompt? Okay, so for week 5, we do have a paper coming up. Very exciting because this is our first paper. Okay, I do want to say we were just on the discussion topic. Remember the APA 7th edition source citation for at least one source. That could be your course text or anything else relevant and applicable that is a reliable and valid source, academic source. We also need that scripture citation. So I'm adding that. And remember, at least 3 days within the week for frequency. That's just a side note. But back to the paper. This one's pretty interesting. Okay, so thinking about nature versus nurture, this is sort of along those lines. We're talking about peer versus parent influence. Remember, not every child has 2 parents, and that could be because a parent has died or because maybe a parent's not involved anymore. A child could be raised by a grandparent or even in the foster system, or the child might be adopted partway through childhood. So when we use the term parents, that's a pretty diverse term because all families might look different in some way. But what we're really talking about when we say parent is the adult who's consistently raising that child over the longest period of time. And that could be 2 adults or one adult. But the paper is examining the influence of parental guidance and behavior and values and contributions on a child versus the influence of peers. So we've got a little video to watch. You're reading the text and then you're writing a response. So we need to compare and contrast the view of the person in the video. A little spoiler for you is that person's going to tell you that peers are the main influence for our development, especially as we're adolescents. That's kind of a time of life that we can focus in on here. And then for the Bernstein textbook, you're going to see more of a perspective related to parental influence. And that could be the nature component, because there is a genetic factor if those people are the biological parents. But that can also be a nurture factor, and that would be parents raising a child in a Christian home, for instance. It could be parents raising a child with a really significant emphasis on hard work and the value of $1. Could be parents raising a child in community with a lot of social engagement. So when you think about yourself, as well as your friends and family, people you've observed, you could think about siblings, you could think about even people in the media. Think about popular TV shows, movies, or books that you've enjoyed. Obviously, some of that is fiction, so we can kind of take it with a grain of salt, but it's interesting to examine the development of a child through childhood, adolescence, and into young adulthood. Who has the most influence? So I want you to think about yourself. Think about your adult family members, your parents over time, and then think about the influence of your friends, the people in your same age group. You're going to consider who has had more influence on you, and then you're going to respond to these questions with the biblical perspective integrated. So we need to do a strong analysis with compare and contrast approach. For the video view, these two views that I just was telling you about, the video view and the textbook view. Harris, again, is a video person saying that peers have a more major influence. So we'll need to say, what are the differences between these two perspectives? And then is her view supported by research? So be sure to address that part of the point, or that point in the prompt, very carefully. The biggest problem in papers, I'll tell you two of the biggest problems in papers that can hurt the grade. A would be not meeting the length requirement, which is outlined right down here, minimum of 3 pages. You want to shoot for 3, maybe 4. That's one of the biggest things, because if you don't meet that length requirement, there's no way you'll be able to get full credit. The second thing that hurts papers the most is when we just breeze right past certain parts of the prompt. And when I say prompt, it's these bullet points right here. This is what we need to write about. So somebody might see this bullet point, compare and contrast Harris's view to the Bernstein text, and might say, yeah, okay, I'll compare and contrast. And what criticisms do you have? Okay, that means we left out this whole chunk right here. So please be sure to clearly address whether the view of Harris in the video is or is not supported by psychological research. And a very beautiful shortcut resource for this part of the prompt is your textbook, because your textbook is not only the opinions of Bernstein, it's also very evidence-based and research-based. So your textbook will give you information from different studies and from other valid and reliable sources in the field that indicate the importance or the significance of parental influence versus peer influence, and really examine that subject matter. Okay. Criticisms of the theory of Harris about peers having more influence. So if you disagree with it, what's the problem with it? And even if you do agree with it, we still need to be able to have critical thinking and step back and say, what's the trouble with this? How could this go wrong? The theoretical approach that she's taking. And then we need to be sure to address this second part of the prompt. What are the positive highlights of the idea that parents are given too much blame? So the video and your reading content will hit on some of this, but I'm going to give you all, anybody who watches this, as well as those who are here, thanks for coming, a little spoiler as well. This is a good hint for the way to take this question if you choose to. There have been some really terrible and tragic mass acts of violence by young people, particularly those in schools. And I know that y'all can think of those too. There have been some really sad and difficult circumstances in which those young people have made these violent and fatal decisions, and culture and the population at large sometimes turns on the parents of that person and says, well, if you had been less this or more that, if you had, used corporal punishment, or if you hadn't used corporal punishment, or you should have, made more money or been more present, or some kind of thing to blame the parents for the actions of the adolescent child. And as we all know, that could be really harmful. So that's a suggestion. You can use it in your paper if you take that angle for the positive ideas that parents might be blamed too much. That can be harmful in a situation like what I just outlined. If you choose to take it from a different angle, that's fine too, but that's just kind of a little hint for you. And then what does the Bible say about the role of the parent in child development, and scripture about nature versus nurture? Very, very good book for this that you probably know is the book of Proverbs. That gives some really, really solid parenting guidance and just talks about a person developing in general and where character comes from and the value of hard work. So Proverbs can give you some good insight. There are also wonderful, useful passages all throughout the Bible. So that's a paper that we have coming up. That's week 5, sorry. And then week 6, we have another quiz. So as we approach this week 6 and as it begins, you will see an announcement with some bullet points for what to study again. Hopefully that'll be useful for you. So questions, comments about the paper content that we just addressed? Okay, so I want to show you all another website. We have a little less than 10 minutes left, and I personally find this site very useful. So I'm going to share the screen with you again here in just one moment. Okay. Just had to get that pulled up. You should be able to see the screen now. This website, can everybody see these Bible verses? Thumbs up.
Yep, I can see them.
Thank you so much, Emma. Okay, so this website is called openbible.info. Okay, openbible.info will get you to the main page right here. And you can search to find information about all different topics in the Bible. So you'll see that back here, I had typed in, what does the Bible say about peace? Because we all need more of that. It's a wild world. There's a lot of hard stuff that we encounter on a daily basis. So if you type in, what does the Bible say about peace? You'll get a lot of different verses that may or may not be appropriate for what you're pursuing. Look, I'm still scrolling. Still scrolling. So if you ever struggle in a paper where they say integrate the biblical perspective, what does the Bible say about family? Oh, there you go. Even easier for this week. What does the Bible say about parenting? Or I could say parents. That might be an easier word. Here we have a really lengthy list, and you'll notice a lot of them are from the book of Proverbs, as I was just mentioning we were talking about. But we've got Exodus, Psalms, we got Deuteronomy. So we've got a really good mix here of the Old and the New Testament, these Bible verses about parenting. So this is openbible.info. And I believe if you put topics after that, you can see what I'm doing right here at the top, you get straight to that search engine. So that's the topical Bible. So if you're not familiar yet, just wanted you all to be aware of that website resource. Last question, do you see the colorful visual as we wrap up here? This is the last page to examine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Isaac. Okay. So this is the work of Erickson, which is kind of an interesting name. I just wanted to get a visual so that we can all examine it together. It always strikes me a little funny that his name is Erickson. But this is his theory of development. So he talks about psychosocial development. And this is just a little kind of an appetizer as we're moving into more of this content in the next several weeks, and you'll be integrating it more, for instance, with the Harris versus Bernstein paper. Erickson is a person who developed a theory about development that is a favorite theory for a lot of people who are examining their own development and the development of others. So we got many different ages here. Different sources might tweak these just a little bit, like in months, for instance, but the gist of it will be the same no matter where you're looking. The first stage of life, so Erickson said this was infancy to around 18 months, so first year and a half or so of life. The crisis that we encounter when we are developing is trust versus mistrust. And so the idea that Erickson developed in this theory is that for each stage and phase of life, and this would be for somebody we're assuming is living a traditional lifespan, a long life, maybe up to age 80, for instance, for each of these stages of life is encountering a crisis, and that crisis must be resolved for the person to move into the next stage. And for each resolution option, because he listed 2 options for each stage, one is considered good or positive or healthy, and one is considered bad or problematic. So it's really trust versus mistrust here. Obviously, trust would be the healthy one. And if we resolve the crisis in the negative, unhealthy way, which is mistrust, we can have a lot of problems interpersonally and within ourselves, as well as in our relationships with others throughout our lives. So some events that could cause a baby, if you're going with Erickson's theory, and you may or may not agree with it, that's why it's called a theory. But if we were going to say that a baby resolved this crisis with mistrust, this could be because a baby is consistently neglected. And unfortunately, the baby might be left in a hotel room or not fed, or might be experiencing homelessness and maybe abandoned somewhere. And that would cause a baby to develop mistrust. So that's the first crisis. But if a child receives consistent care and nurture, that child would develop trust, and the crisis would be resolved in a positive way. This takes us to the next 18 months to 3 years-ish, which is autonomy versus shame or doubt. Obviously, we're trying to develop will here, and we've all seen it with those children who are in this age group. And I don't know if the terrible twos phrase is really evidence-based, but we do sometimes see a lot of behavior during this time. A child is developing verbal communication. No can become a very preferred word. So what we want to develop in a child here is strength and confidence and clear communication. And what might happen if that's not encouraged and facilitated, and if a parent or another caregiver is not engaging consistently in a healthy manner with that child, would be shame or doubt, insecurity, confusion, and that could continue to cause problems for the child. 3 to 5 years would be taking initiative versus falling into guilt. And you can see that these are moving up as we go. A very important one I want to highlight, well, there are actually 2. First of all, 13 to 21 years of age. So that's roughly adolescent time period and young adulthood, would be identity versus confusion. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory, because every person, even if it's not outwardly evident, has to work through a process of understanding who he or she is during the adolescent years. Do I want to align with the faith and the values and the lifestyle that has been provided to me and explained to me by my family and my parents, or do I want to, go in a different way and deviate from that? Intimacy versus isolation, 21 to 39. That could be a person choosing to have a marriage and a family, but obviously we don't have to have a marriage and a family to be healthy and connected. It would more be in that situation, somebody developing strong and healthy friendships. And obviously both of those things are valuable and important. Just connections with others in general. It can be really easy in this 21 to 39-year-old age range to isolate, because you may be busy with work, money might be a problem, you might be stressed, and many people start to feel depressed. A very important one then would be generativity versus stagnation. And this was the one I really wanted to hit on. These people in this age group, 40 to 65, are often considered what they might call empty nesters, depending on how old somebody was. If they had a child, they're starting to have a home where the children may not be living there anymore and are independent or are adults. And even if they didn't have children, they're going through the aging process. And that can cause some feelings of just frustration and difficulty if physically they can't do what they used to be able to do. And it's important to remain creative and engaged and productive and positive, and ultimately to end life with integrity versus despair, because we all will make mistakes and do things that we regret over time. You know, I wish I had parented differently or been different in a marriage or been different in my community or my career. Or I wish I'd worked less and focused more on this and less on money, or whatever the case may be. So ending life with integrity and really holding fast to faith and to who we know that we are, created in the image of God, and our identity in Christ, is very important, of course, throughout life, but especially at the end of life when some of that despair can creep in. So that's a rundown of the work of Erickson, and we'll be diving further into that as we proceed with the reading and the course content. Any questions before we conclude?
I have a really off-topic question.
What's that?
So if I miss one of these like class meetings, where would I find the recorded version?
Yeah, good question. So it should be, I can share the screen again, because they're always going to be here and it should be accessible to you pretty easily. So I'm just going to show you so that you can see. So you see my Blackboard screen?
Yes.
All right. So if you go to dashboard here on the left, and it's good for everybody to see this, yours should look like this too, where it goes my announcements. You can always click on the bottom right at that box. It says more announcements. And then as you scroll down, you'll see, I'll show you where one is right now. So because we had a week 2 video class. Let me make sure. It should be just a YouTube link. There. Okay, so there's going to be video links, and that's where we're going to locate them. So they're all going to be on the course dashboard. Okay, so like this one for today, we'll show you as a YouTube video link.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Anything else? All right, guys, take care. Have a really good evening, and we'll be in touch. Good job. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for class.
Of course. Take care, you guys.
Bye, thank you.